when you look out into the digital marketing space, certainly in particular, and you look at what a crowded space that is, and how we are individually bombarded by content from countless channels, right? Whether it's your streaming Hulus and Netflixes and Amazon Primes, or your social media, your Instagrams and your TikToks and let's say your Facebooks. How and where are people consuming content, and how are you targeting them appropriately to ensure that you're actually getting eyeballs on your marketing, and are they the right eyeballs?
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, this is Max Pittman with WriteForMe, and you're listening to another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast. We're going to meet the experts who are making things happen and scaling their businesses. And today we're talking about Fulcrum Digital with Mr. Andrew Potkewitz, who is the VP of Marketing and Partnerships at Fulcrum Digital. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Max. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Andrew, he's got a very impressive background in marketing and strategy, and he's carved a successful path for himself in the digital transformation landscape and has been instrumental in driving sustainable growth at Fulcrum and at his former company, RedStage. And he brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion on driving growth in an ever-evolving digital transformation world that we're living in. And the company Fulcrum is obviously in the digital transformation space. And so I'm definitely excited to dive into what's going on, at the organization, and into obviously, how you're thinking about how this landscape is ever changing and evolving, and how marketing plays into this. But before we jump into the organization itself and what your focuses are, our community at Business Ninjas is built of entrepreneurs and executives and sales and marketing leaders like yourself. So if you wouldn't mind, feel free to share with our community a little bit about yourself, your role, and some of the things you're focused on.
Yeah, I appreciate that introduction. I think you've already set a pretty high bar that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to meet, but definitely appreciate the kind words. So first off, thanks for having me. Appreciate being here. Always excited to chat about digital transformation, tech, e-commerce, and the like. A bit about me. Really came from a retail background, brick and mortars with the Home Depot for about 8-9 years across 2 stints. And then ran some call center teams across what was then Covidien and now Medtronic. So a pretty deep history in customer service, which really has played well in converting into the sort of digital agency space and understanding that, how to work with clients, how to understand and empathize with what their needs are. I ended up sort of happenstance getting into the digital space around 2014, joining my first agency with a couple of high school friends, actually, a little boutique agency out of New York, in the digital commerce space, really building out custom web apps and bespoke solutions for merchants. Ended up, we grew that company to I think 40-50 folks. Then joined another agency, and about 1.5 years ago joined a company called RedStage, which was already part of Fulcrum Digital. Fulcrum Digital had acquired RedStage back in 2016. RedStage being a leader in the systems integrator e-commerce space across platforms like Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, Salesforce, et cetera. And I've actually recently gone through an exciting rebrand, actually launching today. Within this hour, our new website is launching for Fulcrum Commerce. So we're sort of rebranding the RedStage to Fulcrum Commerce to fall more in line with the Fulcrum digital brands. And we can sort of talk more about branding and what that looks like with all the agency acquisitions that have been going on over the past couple of years in particular. But yeah, we remain a leader in the digital transformation space, in the systems integration space across a number of different verticals, including financial services and insurance and higher education, consumer products and services, food service, where we have our own SaaS ERP for food service, and then as I said, e-commerce, which is a lot of my background in this space, but. It's been a very interesting, exciting last few years in particular in this digital space, and it continues to evolve. And irrespective of market conditions, digital transformation will continue. And it's a pretty exciting place to be.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting for sure in this day and age. And I appreciate you sharing a little bit about like your background and how that's definitely evolved to where you are today. And not necessarily to put you on the spot a little bit, but I kind of like to do this just because we love to tell growth stories, and part of that growth story for Fulcrum has probably evolved a lot over the last few years. But I'd love it if you can kind of share with me what's Fulcrum Digital's elevator pitch, like what's like the problem that Fulcrum Digital solves for its customers at a high level?
Yeah, not really putting me on the spot, so I was bracing myself, but I'm comfortable with this. I don't want to keep going back to this but the digital transformation area of enterprise business. When we look at the evolution of technology and the adoption of technology, and as with anything else with adoption, you tend to see small businesses move first, right? They're more agile, usually owner operated, and the stakeholders are your key points of contact, usually as an agency or a service provider. Certainly when COVID hit, those folks were the first to move, followed by the medium businesses. And then as enterprise businesses, get their budgets in line and work out their, 1, 3, 5, 10-year plans, you start to see those folks start to invest. And then, behind them by a country mile, as they say, is B2B, which really right now is one of the sort of greenfields areas, in particular for digital commerce. But the pain points historically are and continue to be automation, right? Automation of workflows, consolidation of systems. When you think about the growth of businesses, especially in the enterprise space, a lot of growth is through acquisitions. They end up acquiring companies that have disparate tech stacks, and all of a sudden you have your infrastructure and your IT team managing dozens and dozens of separate instances of similar technologies, whether it's a CRM or whether it's an email marketing platform. So all of a sudden you've got all these siloed initiatives, which requires a lot of sort of manual inputs. So consolidating the data, cleaning the data, bad data in, bad data out. So there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into cleaning up those databases. And a lot of times going into these conversations with merchants and other enterprises and businesses, and really pushing them on understanding what their workflows are, and then raising our hand and saying, hang on a second, why do you do it that way? Just out of curiosity, we've seen it done different ways. Why do you do it this way? And a lot of times the answer is, well, that's just how we've always done it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of legacy processes, legacy systems, that if you optimize those and you reduce that footprint and you reduce your overhead there, you're able to operate a lot more efficiently. And then you're able to free up folks to really focus on the high value things within your company and not these manual tasks and uploading of spreadsheets and manual data entry. So I'd say that's really a large area of focus for us as well as other folks in this space as merchants look at as brands look out into the future and see that there's some economic challenges ahead. How do you maximize your digital exposure that way?
Gotcha. Yeah, maximizing the digital exposure. That's really interesting. Can you kind of dive into like what you mean by that? Because like I heard like obviously the pain points you guys focus in on, and like you mentioned enterprise. It sounds like maybe even timing or acquisitions, maybe a good timing or place for you guys to start being a part of these conversations. What did you mean by kind of like maximizing their digital?
Yeah, if you look at a couple of use cases, you look at in particular on the commerce side of things, brick and omni-channel, or folks who have brick and mortar and a digital presence, a website. And you look at what foot traffic has been, irrespective of COVID, there's been a decline in foot traffic in brick and mortar stores, which was expedited exponentially by COVID. The cost of the real estate, whether you own or rent, versus what your staffing looks like for the store versus what your reach is within that sort of geography. If you're able to do more with your e-commerce website and reach a larger audience, you're able to be more efficient with your in-store staff combined with your online presence and sort of, what we used to call it the Home Depot, the endless aisle, where you're able to have in-store folks also work to sell online. The other part of this is understanding what tools are at your disposal in the digital space. A lot of companies work in these silos, right, where they work within their internal teams. And when you have partners out in the ecosystem, certainly in the agency space, who have exposure and a lens into a much wider selection of strategies that they've seen across businesses and other approaches, they can sort of bring that expertise and say, hey, we've seen this work, elsewhere. How can we, help you do better here? When you look out into the digital marketing space, certainly in particular, and you look at what a crowded space that is, and how we are individually bombarded by content from countless channels, right? Whether it's your streaming Hulus and Netflixes and Amazon Primes, or your social media, your Instagrams and your TikToks and let's say your Facebooks. How and where are people consuming content, and how are you targeting them appropriately to ensure that you're actually getting eyeballs on your marketing, and are they the right eyeballs? A lot of times, you go into these exercises with brands where you ask a lot of questions up front, and you do the customer personas, and you might ask, well, who are you targeting? Who's your target demo? And they give a thoughtful explanation as to who they're trying to target and what they're doing to target those people. And then you go and look at their Google Analytics, and you sort of say there's a disconnect. You say, well, you're targeting these folks, but these are the folks who are actually buying from your site. So maybe let's reassess this and sell more to the folks who are actually buying, and not spend time being aspirational as to who you're trying to reach, because you could maximize your ROI if you're actually going after the folks who are actually interested in your brand versus who you want interested in your brand. I think I've strayed off topic from the question, which was the use cases of expanding your maximizing your digital exposure. But yeah, there are countless ways to do that. Anyway, through your digital marketing, through to retention and loyalty programs, through to having a more streamlined CRM into digital marketing channels like your email marketing platform, or certainly SMS more and more is becoming a pretty significant channel for companies to communicate with their audience. So those are just a few examples.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you diving into some of those examples, but also like kind of just diving into the landscape in general. And it seems like your digital services can hit a lot of different industries, from retail, as we've been talking about, but also, e-commerce, logistics. I saw on the website, even financial services, and you guys provide digital services to a lot of those industries, right? So is there, I guess, a specific, focus on, is it, developing mobile apps, or, is it on migrations? Where would you say kind of the core offerings are for maybe some of the industries you guys are partnering up with?
So, at our core, we're a systems integrator, which means that we take a technology stack made up of independent SaaS or otherwise technologies, and we ensure that they all talk to each other and that the data is flowing back and forth. The way I describe this, in particular to my parents who still don't understand what I do 8 years later, is, if you want to build a car, you need a transmission, you need a chassis, you need windows and muffler and hubcaps. And if you buy all those things independently to build your perfect car, you need someone to put them all together so they actually operate as a single unit and you can drive that car. That's what we do for technology. Now the history of this goes back a long time, and certainly with Fulcrum, founded in 1999, have been doing this for quite a while. And as I mentioned, Red Stage was doing this in the commerce space, and Fulcrum, which had been a digital transformation shop, not focused on commerce or transactional, acquired RedStage to be the commerce or the transactional arm of the company. Now we're fully integrated. But design and development is sort of has become table stakes throughout the ecosystem. No one can say, because we all share a developer pool, right? Everyone in the industry goes, they spend a few years here, a few years there. We've been fortunate at Fulcrum that, we've got folks, 10, 15, even 20 years into the company, which is pretty exciting. But you need to expand beyond design and dev. That doesn't cut it anymore. You can't say that your designers or developers are better. So a few areas where you can sort of double down, or to say diversify your offering. You need to have things like, offer, let's say, cybersecurity services or cloud infrastructure or accessibility services, or artificial intelligence, machine learning. You have to have all these add-on services because technology is becoming commoditized, right? So there's less explicit development work to do as you start seeing these bundled up commoditized platforms or quick start or accelerators like we have. We have something called Fulcrum One, which is sort of a base build that we then are able to customize to different businesses. So that, there's 60-70% of your platform's already built, and then we build on top of that. So that I think the additional value adds there are I think we're in part where we differentiate ourselves. When it comes down to it, for folks looking for digital agencies and solution partners in the space, what really differentiates companies in today's landscape is people, process, and delivery. These are long-term relationships. This is not, you're not a customer where you go to McDonald's and you buy a Big Mac and you walk away and never see the person again. These are client partner relationships where you are talking, sometimes daily, but certainly weekly and monthly for 3, 6, 12 months, 2 years. So there has to be chemistry there first and foremost. Do you feel good about the relationship going into it, which comes first, and then do you trust that team and you trust that they're able to deliver on what the proposed project is. And what differentiates folks within this space is what is their process. And everyone has a different process, and everyone can talk about, waterfall versus agile versus hybrid. It means nothing if you don't have trust in the people and the system that they're presenting to you. And I think one of the biggest challenges the ecosystem has faced, certainly over the last 3 years, and in particular during COVID, was on the delivery side of things. With the demand for technologists and developers skyrocketing during COVID, with everyone stampeding toward digital transformation because you couldn't go out to the store. There was really high demand, so salaries were soaring and churn was high across the board. That's settled down significantly since sort of the COVID became endemic and not pandemic. But yeah, that's a little thumbnail sketch of what the ecosystem looks like right now.
Yeah, I love kind of hearing how you guys have thought about the whole ecosystem and creating even a different platform with Fulcrum One. It definitely sounds like there's value adds that you guys have been providing, and the people and the process, and like you mentioned, the delivery are a big piece of potentially that secret sauce that you guys are providing your clients and your customers when you guys partner up with them. And with that in mind, and thinking about this landscape that you guys are in, right? It's definitely highly competitive, right? There's no shortage of companies that are system integrators out there like yourself, right? So from a marketing perspective, how are you differentiating from other players other than obviously the people and the processes, right? Are there other unique value props or messaging strategies that you guys have developed to stand out?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenging landscape. You've got a few things going on. You've got a combination of acquisitions happening. As I mentioned, RedStage, 7 years ago now, and you see a lot of other agencies being sort of scooped up by the larger global folks like the Accentures of the world and Cognizants and otherwise. So a lot of the smaller folks have really struggled. I've seen a lot of service providers and solution providers sort of shut down during and post COVID, and or get snatched up by larger corporations and making these sort of I don't have a word for it, but these mega agencies. One of the reasons I joined this company about a year and a half ago, having been in this space, as I said, going on 8 years now, was twofold. One was I had never seen. This is going to be one of those, how the sausage is made, but we're going to talk about it anyway because this is what we do in the partner ecosystem. When you look at retail, and you look at, we no longer really refer to it as e-commerce as much as just commerce, because this is omni-channel, multi-channel, integrating in-store with online experiences. It is somewhat. It's a little bit like the Wild West. When I go back to my Home Depot days, there are these sort of formulaic approaches to retail. In a Home Depot location, that this end cap, based on where it is in the store, takes X number of hours to switch out, will hold X amount of product that has X velocity. You have X foot traffic in your store, it will sell out in X time, and you have this gross margin on the product, and this is what you make on it. It's kind of a tried and true. You go back to the general stores of the 1800s or even before then. People understand how brick and mortar retail works. When you move into a digital space, it's kind of the Wild West. You really, you try things sometimes on site, whether it's an e-commerce site or otherwise. You work on some personalization tactic, whether it's personalized learning in higher ed or custom checkouts for financial services or payment options. And you sort of say, hey, let's see what happens if we do this. You do some A/B testing where you split traffic and send some traffic to one experience and some to the other, and then you see which one wins once it reaches statistical significance. But we are all collectively as an industry learning a ton every day. And part of that learning, getting back to the original question, was how do you succeed in an environment like this? Is really your partnership ecosystem. So if part of my job is sort of marketing, PR, and communications, part of it is overseeing our partnership ecosystem. And just like in your personal life, if you have a friend who goes, I've got a great lawn guy, or I've got a great contractor, or I've got a great doctor, and you go, oh, well, I trust this person, I will trust this referral, and I'll have that conversation because now I feel like I know this person. It's as we'd say, a warm intro. You are only as strong as your partner ecosystem in this space. You cannot succeed alone, and just like you choose your friends wisely, you choose your partners wisely, to ensure there's sort of bi-directional growth there. So the partnership pipeline is meaningful, right? Once it takes a bit to build that. I'm a big analogy person. I don't think I've dropped any analogies quite yet. But when you look at a salesperson, my perception is, a salesperson sees a tree and wants to chop it down and build a house to keep his team or her team, warm tonight, which is that's their role. This is kick down doors and get new business. In the partnership world, partnership folks look at trees and say, hey, if I water this thing, I can have apples and feed my team forever. So partnerships is a long tail play. It's not, there's no short-term ROI in partnerships. So you establish these partnerships, you grow the trust between those partners, you start sort of co-selling and seeing where there's traction across your client bases and your prospect bases. And once you start locking in opportunities, like it's like the giving, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Once you have that trust and win deals beget more deals. So that's sort of the pipeline that keeps building itself, because you have your advocates out there in the market and the ecosystem who are saying, hey, if you talk to Fulcrum, they're great, or you talk to X, Y, and Z, they're great. The other area is, we've kind of come full circle where, pre-COVID, for any given industry, there was tremendous opportunity at the sort of general industry conferences. I look at the e-commerce space in particular. You look at, the IRCEs, which then became Retail X, and now it's RICE or eTail West or Shop Talk, and they're all great shows. And I love a great show like anyone else does, and certainly seeing partners and building those relationships. But in terms of prospecting, it's a different world post-COVID. It used to be, I liken it to the plains of the Serengeti, where you've got these watering holes where everybody goes and everybody feeds, and some people get eaten, or some animals get eaten. But, you used to be able to go there and come home with, a list of leads, because every merchant, every brand, would go to these general tech shows for their industry, whether it was insurance or higher ed or otherwise. And post-COVID, especially with the unsure markets and folks reassessing budgets and all the things that have been challenges over the past year, we need to go to them. We need to go back to places where the merchants are already going, not assume they're going to come to us. This is not Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And these shows, again, while they're productive in the partnership ecosystem, we're getting back to like sort of, when I first joined e-commerce back in 2014, 2015, where it was more account-based marketing, and you had to find your right target audience, and you really had to find the right people and do outreach and go to their niche specific trade shows. So trade shows have become a really big driver for us. PPC is getting extremely competitive. Facebook marketing is not what it was, and the audience there, may not be the audience you're looking for. But yeah, that's sort of that's where we've doubled down this year and seen success is really on the partnership ecosystem and the account-based marketing and the niche events for vertical specific folks. Now, the other area that has tremendous interest and maybe the biggest driver to some of these technology shows and IT shows is certainly, AI and machine learning. It has been indubitably the most important thing in the past 6 months that's hit the market in your OpenAI and ChatGPT items. But it's a long answer to a short question, but I'm not for being concise.
For sure, right? Like, I think there's a big focus for any company like yourself as a system integrator to have like the right partners. Succeeding and having the right, you can't succeed without having the right partners, and being able to tell like the best in class story about why we partnered with you, right? Why, we use this solution and why it makes sense for you to use both of our solutions together, and why you need to be having these conversations because of that. So I love telling kind of like that best in class story, kind of drink your own champagne, eat your own dog food analogy. Like, I always love, hearing that, because partnerships are obviously make a big piece of telling that brand story. And then, going back into the events world that we're all living in today, I understand, like, you got to show face, you got to be there, you got to be able to build relationships and also see what else is out there and see what other partnerships can be found as well. So, thinking about like you being on the marketing team and, just kind of diving in really briefly there about like PPC and events, right? Content marketing is obviously valuable for you guys. How are you guys creating and distributing like content and engaging, with a new audience? Are there types of content that has been most effective? Has it been events? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. We all have, some of us, by birth, and some of us just through the way that content in the channels that are out there right now are delivering content have shorter and shorter attention spans. It's funny. I remember watching a show that my dad used to love, NCIS, which I think all parents love NCIS. And I noticed one day, and this may be like a Donald Belisario thing, who's the producer of that, or the creator of that. In that show, the camera never stops moving. Right? You look back to your 90s and 80s sitcoms of single or dual camera, stationary, the Friends of the Seinfelds of the world, where it was a stationary camera. And you look at a show like NCIS, and for me, it became a distraction. Like, literally every shot has there's no stationary camera ever in the entire 44-minute show in any episode. So our attention spans are shrinking. Our focus is getting diverted. We are getting a bit more, I think, skeptical of content we see, just the rate at which it's churned out, whether it's through news media or other. It's it's difficult to cut through that noise and really get your message across. So certainly things like this, these video content where there's actually a person on the screen, talking about real things and it's organic, usually hits a lot better than a more structured, in my opinion, sort of a panel webinar where you've got, very specific questions and timed answers, and it feels a little bit forced and artificial. Infographics, we've gotten a bit more into infographics, which I think are seeing a resurgence. It's sort of a fun, playful way. A picture tells 1,000 words, so it's a way to get a lot more content out there in a more consolidated fashion. Video content, certainly LinkedIn remains the most important channel professionally, and making sure that you are. This sounds so simple. This is like marketing 101, but it's not as easy as it sounds to do, which is keeping your branding consistent across channels and keeping the experience, just like any brand wants to have consistency from like their Instagram ad linked to the landing page and the website. From an agency perspective, you need to have consolidated and standardized sort of branding across your channels, but also speaking the voice of those channels, if that makes sense. So your creative is on brand and your messaging is on channel. One of the reasons why we went through this Red Stage rebrand, which again should be launching literally during this call, it just makes things clearer to your audience through the channels what like the sort of mothership, as it were, was. But it also significantly streamlines your back office operations. When you have consistent branding across your channels, it makes it easier for your creative team and your content team to create those assets and that copy for those.
Yeah, it makes sense that LinkedIn is definitely a big channel for you guys. Like definitely staying top of mind and posting there at least once a day, once a day, or at least like once every other day is going to be big for you and for any company in this in your digital transformation space, because LinkedIn is such a big resource for all of us in the marketing world, and being there is a big key for being consistent with your branding as well, and being able to put that in front of your prospects and thousands of followers that are looking at you guys as well. So I could definitely see that as an area for you guys to continue to create content on. As we wrap things up here, Andrew, like this has been really great, by the way, and I appreciate you kind of diving into what Fulcrum does and who you guys are, and also some of your philosophies and some of the things you're focused on the marketing team. Is there anything that you think you want to be celebrating a year from now? We're coming up on Q3, it's a month away depending on your fiscal calendar. So like what's something that is on your roadmap or the company's roadmap that you guys are trying to celebrate?
Yeah, certainly, finding time to take vacation, that would be a huge win for me. But outside of that, you mentioned, LinkedIn, social media, and for us, and I'm sure for other brands, across, across Fulcrum Digital, across what is now Fulcrum Commerce as of today, which was Red Stage, across our culinary digital division, which we didn't really talk about, which is fine. There's a lot to talk about there, but that's the SaaS food service ERP. We've got 20 plus social media channels across these three sort of brands. And that's a tremendous lift. I mean, social media is probably, not probably, it is the single most important class of channel for top of funnel acquisition, right? Just getting more eyeballs, having things, go viral. When the marketing agencies make me a video that goes viral, make me a viral video. It's always funny. One of the biggest challenges I think marketing teams have, and this is everywhere, outside of what we own and accept as, a significant part of our job is herding cats. Marketing struggles oftentimes in organizations when you're caught between, sales and operations, and you are sort of the arm that's looking to gain, to pull information for content from subject matter experts across your organization. It requires a lot of patience and follow-up. That goes for everywhere. I think the biggest challenge within that is, especially as companies grow, and in particular when they're growing in part through acquisition. We talked a little bit about siloed systems, for brands and merchants and companies because of acquisition. The same goes for the agency side of things. So every company has challenges around standardization, consolidation, and centralization of marketing materials. And that goes for things like decks and one-pagers, and having a central repository of your long form description, your short form description, your blurb. So, I think that's an area where every organization has challenges, and the importance, just like we talk about on the brand and the enterprise business side, of consolidating consolidating systems and centralizing data. That goes for marketing teams as well, on both sides of the fence, on the client side and the agency side. So we are all marching toward that, because it makes us more efficient. It makes the brand stronger because you've got consistency across marketing materials, and just enables you to do more effectively, and not have to worry about, this thing that came from this source, is not the current branding or the current logo, or, it makes things easier to roll out. So,
Sure.
Yeah, that's sort of my,
So it sounds like continued collaboration with departments for you guys is definitely going to be crucial for the company's growth, is kind of what I'm hearing.
I would say that's something that we've done. That's something that was, that's always going to be a challenge. But I think if we're talking, if the question is sort of generally speaking, where is the area that folks should be focused on? And certainly I've always been focused on and beating the drum of centralization, consolidation, standardization. I think everyone needs to look internally and work on those areas. I think we've been fortunate and successful in doing that. But yeah.
Gotcha. That's super helpful.
It's been a huge help to us in accelerating our content creation and publishing.
Yeah, it makes sense how that can help with accelerating and publishing for sure, right? Having everything centralized in one place. Sales enablement can easily be grabbed when the sales team needs it. Marketing can give it to the sales team, put it all in one place, right? Hopefully you're not just using a Google Drive for something like that. But it makes sense. That's definitely a big focus for you to make sure there's a consistent brand story being told. And your sales team can continue to nurture with highly valued content. As sales aren't happening on the first touch point, they're happening on the 10 to 12 touch point. Opportunities are being developed then. So the more content, obviously, the better, and helping the sales team be able to be more effective in their outreach too.
Yeah, I think to that point quickly, I remember when I first started in doing this, I think it was like 6 to 7 touch points was like the average before you get engagement. And I think we're up to 13 to 15 now, or some crazy number. So when you look at content velocity, we post across 2 of our brands, we post daily. The other one that's across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram,
TikTok.
No, we not. Well, TikTok, we are on the verge of engaging with. But I missed something there. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, I think those are the big 3. I don't know what I forgot. Yeah, it's a lot there, and you're really you want to be in everybody's feed every day, right? So when your sales team does reach out, or you're fortunate enough to have a prospect reach out to you, But if your sales team reaches out, they will have seen you somewhere, because staying top of mind and being everywhere all the time, and micro content, and taking larger pieces of content and slicing them up into graphics and quotes and things like that. People are not, more often than not, they're not clicking on the read more on LinkedIn, right? They see the image, they see the copy in the image, and they see that first sentence, and that's as much time as you normally have across social media, unless there's something really compelling in the creative.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Andrew, as we wrap things up, like, this is, by the way, like, been super insightful to, who Andrew is and what you guys are focusing in on, and obviously what Fulcrum does as well. Like, if people who are listening are interested in getting a hold of Fulcrum, what's the best way for them to do that? And also, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, it was great chatting. I always appreciate chatting about tech and the ecosystem. So thanks for having me on the podcast. We have our websites, obviously, fulcrumdigital.com being our primary one. Fulcrum, let's go with that. We've got Culinary Digital. My email is andrewp@fulcrumdigital.com. So by all means, any questions or any feedback, critical or otherwise, don't hesitate to reach out. So Max, appreciate the chat, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, I appreciate your time as well, Andrew. And yeah, everyone go check out fulcrumdigital.com. Hit up Andrew on LinkedIn. He's super active there, and feel free to reach out to him, see if you can collaborate with him. Maybe some partners listening, who knows? Maybe some conversation gets started with this. But I appreciate you being here, Andrew, and sharing your story. And I appreciate the conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot about you and what you guys are doing as well there. So thanks for being a part of the Business Ninjas podcast. And everyone, thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Max. Take it easy.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Bye.